So anytime you start something with your teachers, I always encourage to start with something that's very manageable. When I worked with middle schoolers, I called it breaking the white. You know, anytime you give a writing assignment and you're like, go, and they all sit there. So you want to have the first thing that you do be very easy so that you get into the flow of it without feeling overwhelmed. That's this first step of the unit template, just filling out the basic information. That information includes, put your grade on there. Put the subject, in this case it would be ELA reading, you can follow that across the top. Put your theme on there. You could choose to use, remember everyone came up with that CCR name for each standard? That could be your theme if you're just doing one standard per unit, or you could come up with something else. You can kind of flip through each of those and just look at that top line and see the different themes they came up with. Put your standard on there. So you put into the standard box, you just cut and paste in, is there one standard or maybe there's more, it's just cut and pasted right in. And finally, for the standard or standards that you chose, look at your unpacked document and cut and paste the unpacked concepts and skills into this. So when you fill it out and look at your sample, these highlighted in yellow pieces should be the sections that you're looking at. You get to fill out that much without thinking. Maybe without thinking isn't quite the right description there. But there's a good chunk of information that can come straight on there. So take a minute and find that. This, by the way, is why it's so important that your unpacked document, again, is done well. Because not only did you need it for that assessment piece, but you're also needing it to fill in for this unit template piece. Beautiful. So we have a good amount of information on there. Now we need to start doing some excellent thinking with this unit. The first thing we want to do is think about the enduring understanding. It's great that we have standards that tell us to teach, but if we cannot give our students a clear rationale for why it matters for them to learn this unit, then it's not worth teaching. So the first thing we need to do in developing a unit is come up with the rationale of why does a student need to learn this. And that's what the enduring understanding is. The enduring understanding goal is that you always want to say that the student should be able to transfer this knowledge to something outside of the unit, or transfer this skill outside of the unit. Otherwise, there's no worth to it. We need to be able to use it in other applications. An enduring understanding typically is a generalization about the unit. A lot of times in literature, you may have also heard it called a big idea. The exact same thing. Here's how you do it. You want to look in your concepts and skills section. Identify what are the big concepts in this unit, and they're right there because you unpacked it before. And then say, why or how is it important for students to learn these concepts? If you look at your template, the enduring understanding is over here with the yellow box. It's not the top box with the essential question, it's the one right beneath it. I encourage you to take 1 minute and look at each of those 4 units and just see different examples of what they said the enduring understanding is. Again, the big concepts from the unit and then explaining why are those concepts important to learn. Enduring understanding, it helps to do together so that people can collaborate on it, even if they're from different grade levels. It helps to have something that you can talk out until you come to kind of really the core of what you're trying to say. The next part, once you have the enduring understanding, is very simple. The essential question is, the enduring understanding is what my students get by the end of the unit. It's why it's important. But now I want to come up with a question that will guide them toward that for the entire unit, that helps them see that every lesson is not something separate, but that they all actually connect together. Because think about it with being in a classroom. You know, how many students are like, remember what we did yesterday? And everyone's like, no. You know, because they don't see the connection day to day. The essential question is, how can I make sure everything connects day to day and the students see that connection? The process for that is very simple. All you do is take your enduring understanding and rephrase it as a question. You want to make sure it's a how or why question, because those are much broader generalizations. If you do a what question, you can answer that in one sentence, not several lessons. So just take the understanding, make it a question. I strongly urge you to have teachers post this question in their room permanently during the entire unit, so that at the beginning of every lesson, it's the first thing they refer to help the students see the bigger picture. Okay, remember our essential question? Here's today's piece of how we're going to address that. So again, you can take a minute to look at each of those samples for how they turn that enduring understanding that you just saw into a question. So once you do the enduring understanding, this one's very easy. You just want to make sure you show the rationale for it, but you're just turning it straight into a question, very quick. Now, the next piece is the core of why we're a Catholic school. Regardless of what subject we're teaching, our Catholicity and our Catholic values need to be infused into everything. And if we don't take the time to really reflect on how best to do that, it's likely that it'll only be done on a surface level, unless someone really has a lot of training, like a master catechist already in the classroom. But most of our teachers need additional support to come up with a good Catholic integration. So that's the next piece of this unit, is how would you incorporate Catholic values into the unit? Now you have some choices here. Normally when I do a unit in social studies, science, or math, I come up with one big kind of integration of Catholic values for the whole unit. So for example, 3rd grade has standards that are all about how everything in the solar system follows a predictable path or orbit. And so you can figure out what's going to happen based on that predictable path. An integration of Catholic values might be, just like everything that God created in the solar system as a predictable path, so does our church with our liturgical year. And we can really figure out through this predictable liturgical year how our cycle of kind of growing and connecting and uniting with Jesus and God happens each year, or celebrating feast days, or all those pieces. So a lot of times in science and social studies you have one connection. You can do that with your ELA standard if you want. However, some other teachers, because literature is so rich in lessons to begin with, they decide that they want to have a different integration of Catholic values for every text that they use during the unit and connect it right into the text that they're reading. So I invite you to take a look at the samples. The sample for 3rd grade shows a person that decided to have a specific Catholic value integration for each one. They're not written on there because that unit actually hasn't been taught yet, but you can see how they just modified the template somewhat so they, next to each text, could write that integration of Catholic values. Versus, if you look at all the other units, they came up with one bigger integration that would match more closely with the skill that they're doing. So take a minute and look at each of those. Our next one is very similar. Just like integration of Catholic values are distinct to our Catholic schools, WCEA has the SLEs being a distinct aspect of our Catholic schools as well. This is something that in many of our schools has become very superficial because we know we had to do it for a document, but it didn't necessarily get infused in our entire curriculum. Here's an opportunity for you to reflect on how to infuse it in a more meaningful way. So again, you want to take an opportunity to say which SLEs would you address in this unit, but more importantly, how would you address them? Because it's really easy just to list some names on there very quickly. So again, take a quick minute. You can look at each of the 4. The thing to pay attention to most carefully is the rationale for how that would happen or how the link would make sense for them.